Welcome to MALDEF's 2019 50th Anniversary Washington, D.C. Awards Gala. Tonight is brought to you by the generous support of Verizon, delivering the promise of a digital world, Fried, Frank, Harris, Schreiber, and Jacobson, and AARP. MALDEF is grateful for the support of our national airline sponsor, Southwest Airlines, our national law firm partner, the Sidley Austin Foundation, and the Planned Parenthood Federation of America, the Warner Media Group, and Comcast NBC Universal Telemundo. MALDEF is proud to honor Jose Antonio Tijerino, President and CEO of the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, attorney and diplomat Abelardo I. Perez, and Maria Gabriela Gavi Pacheco, Program Director of the Dream.us. Our special guest this evening is Ambassador Vilma Martinez. Please welcome your Master of Ceremonies for this evening, news anchor for Noticiero Telemundo 44 Washington, Claudia Curiel.
I have some new friends at my table over here, so thank you for that applause. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to MALDEF's 50th Anniversary Washington, D.C. Awards Gala, and I'm honored to be your host this evening. And on behalf of MALDEF, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Wouldn't be possible without all of your support. And tonight's very exciting because we're marking the 50th anniversary of MALDEF as a Latino legal voice for civil rights in America. And before we start, I'm going to be sharing a few highlights from MALDEF's history. MALDEF opened its doors in 1968 in San Antonio, Texas, thanks to Latino lawyers and activists from the southwestern United States to create a legal organization to serve the Latino community. And for the last 50 years, MALDEF's litigation and advocacy have led to new laws and policies that have impacted the Latino community and the whole country. And whether it's on the streets or in schools, in boardrooms or living rooms, in legislative chambers or courtrooms, right up to the U.S. Supreme Court, MALDEF has earned its reputation as a champion of Latino civil rights. For example, just last week, a federal court in Maryland ruled that the Trump administration cannot add a citizenship question to the 2020 census. I guess you all already heard about that, right? Because it violates the enumeration clause of the Constitution and the Administrative Procedure Act. And that ruling comes in response to a lawsuit filed last May by MALDEF and AAJC that challenged the Trump administration's decision to add that citizenship question. And MALDEF's victories throughout the decades have benefited the Latino community, working to secure its right to a meaningful vote, to equal educational opportunity, to non-discriminatory workplaces, and to fairness and justice in government services. And MALDEF has also championed the rights of immigrants over many decades, including the organization's landmark 1982 Supreme Court victory in Plyer versus Joe. And this case guaranteed the right to a free K-12 education for all children, regardless of immigration status. And MALDEF's efforts have also resulted in federal and state laws that are more respectful of civil and constitutional rights. Also this year marks the 25th anniversary of the California ballot measure that would have restricted access to many public services based on immigration status. And the MALDEF lawsuit that kept Proposition 187 from taking effect is relevant today amid renewed anti-immigrant sentiment nationwide. And MALDEF continues to extend its long history of voting rights victories, and since the last time we were gathered here, making sure that Latino voters have equal opportunity to participate in voting and running for office throughout the country. Throughout this evening, you're going to hear more about what MALDEF has done and continues to do to secure a better life for Latinos here in the United States. And MALDEF, of course, is grateful to have your support in this very important work. In our program this evening, we're going to celebrate the careers and accomplishments of many people who have dedicated themselves to safeguarding and expanding the rights of Hispanics in this country. And as you'll see, we owe them a great deal for their selflessness and their courage. This evening, we're celebrating 3 individuals who have dedicated their lives to protecting and promoting the civil rights of the Latino community. And now I have the pleasure of introducing our first honoree for this evening, Jose Antonio Tijerino, the recipient of MALDEF's Award for Excellence in Community Service. And Jose Antonio Tijerino is president and CEO of the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, which focuses on education, workforce, leadership, and culture through service and innovation. And under Tijerino, the Hispanic Heritage Foundation is recognized as a creative, agile, impact-focused organization boasting a network of 15,000 15 to 35-year-olds Latinos mobilized in the tech and STEM fields, entrepreneurship, finance, media, and other priority areas for America. And the organization's dynamic programs have been recognized by the White House, U.S. Congress, Fortune 500 companies, other nonprofits, and the government of Mexico. And beyond his work with the organization, Tijerino founded the American Project with Notre Dame University to treat immigrants with dignity, the hashtag We Dream America campaign, which included a video that he co-produced of the national anthem performed by a Grammy-nominated band to promote the patriotism of immigrants in America. And he co-founded the Dream Lead Institute and created the Óyeme Project with Imagination Stage. And this includes a play about the plight of unaccompanied minors. He also founded the Refugee Education and Development Effort and has worked extensively in support of refugee families at the border. Tijerino's blogs, very impressive resume. And Tijerino's blogs and media presence have made him a national voice on many issues, including diversity, immigration, creativity, and youth empowerment. He earned his undergraduate degree from the University of Maryland's School of Journalism and was awarded a doctorate degree from the Chicago School. And Tijerino lives here in the Washington, D.C. area with his family, and now we're going to take a look at a video that MALDEF made of him.
Tony and I go way back, so much so that I don't even remember the moment that I met him. I feel like his work and my work have intersected for so long that I can't really pinpoint the exact moment that I met him. But what I can tell you is what a difference he has made in the life of Latinos in this country, and specifically in how advocacy is done here in Washington, D.C. from the standpoint of actually making things happen. And Tony has been a pivotal piece of that for so many years.
Tony's greatest achievement is that he's taken the Hispanic Heritage Foundation and truly transformed it from an organization that celebrated Latino accomplishment to one that is creating Latino accomplishment. He created Loft, Latinos on Fast Track. He's created so many different programs, whether in the STEM arena, and just the fact that he has this innovative and creative mind, touching lives of young Latinos and making sure that we're not just complaining about our problems, but actually creating solutions. But his legacy is that he's touched the lives of hundreds of Latinos, young Latinos, impressionable Latinos that he has taken into a different course, opened their eyes, given them a magic wand to know that they can achieve basically anything that they set their minds to. That's his legacy, to open their minds to being creative and to know that they are the solution. They're not a statistic, they're not a problem, they are a solution.
He engages deeply of what's happening in the moment. So he's not a person that gets tied up in something long-term, and that's his mission, but it's more whatever's at the moment that's happening, whether it's an immigration issue, whether it's poverty, whether it's education, whether it's making sure that our children succeed. He gets in the moment and he makes things happen, whether it's politically or whether it's financially or whether it's getting people mentored and paired up with the right connections to get ahead. Tony is also moved by the human spirit, and I think that makes him vulnerable to reach out and be there for anyone at the moment. So that movement that he feels about the human spirit really is what drives him in his work, whether it's at work or whether it's a friendship or whether he's out there being the warrior and the advocate.
Tony has been driven by one thing, and that is commitment to the Latino community to ensure that they get a fair shake, that they get a fair share, that the policies that are passed by our leaders, both Republicans and Democrats, are policies that will help the Latino community achieve the American dream. And that has been incredibly important, especially in the last several years when the discourse in this country has become so uncivil and so heated, and the focus of what the image of Latinos are in this country has become very negative, frankly, because of that discourse. So I know that the one thing that drives him is to make sure that the Latino community gets that fairness, gets that equal and level playing field in order to be able to achieve the great things that Latinos have been able to achieve in this country, but that to do it so that our children are able to take advantage of the enormous opportunities that come from living in this great country.
Ladies and gentlemen, MALDEF is proud to recognize Jose Antonio Tijerino with his Excellence in Community Service Award.
Thank you very much. It's always disconcerting to stare at a crowd that's more deserving than you are. But I am very, very grateful to MALDEF and everyone in this room and everyone who has been supported by MALDEF for this award. As a resident of the great state of Maryland, I'm grateful for MALDEF challenging the illegitimate citizenship question for the 2020 census. This past week, a federal court in Maryland ruled that the Trump administration can't add a citizenship question to the 2020 census. Justice Sotomayor has said we apply law to facts, we don't apply feelings to facts. And in this case, we will see what the Supreme Court rules, but I know that MALDEF has our collective backs. Thank you, MALDEF. Give you examples to that point. When two of my staff were detained by Border Patrol, despite presenting their proper DACA paperwork, and I desperately went on to social media asking for guidance as they were in a detention center, scared to death, two young women that came from Mexico and worked for me. Which organization was mentioned more than any? MALDEF. Nuestra gente sabe a quién ir. For 50 years, and let me say that again, for 50 years, not popping up over the last 5 or 10, because of the recent issues that have happened. This is history. Over the course of those 5 decades, MALDEF's impact has helped change laws and policies and created a more just environment for the Latino community in our entire country, from our barrios to the Supreme Court. As we all know, it's tiring every single day to fight. And every single day we have another group of combatants and issues that we have to get through. Every single minute of every single day. They're unprecedented attacks on our very existence. But you know what's our big advantage? the same advantage that every Latino boxer has in the ring. The opponent knows he's going to have a long night because Latino boxers don't quit. We don't know how to stay down. We don't know how to go down. We just keep fighting, and sometimes it's to our detriment. But we get up with even more fight. Thank you, Tom, MALDEF staff, mi hermano Raul Lomelí, for continuing to fight for justice every single day, for continuing to throw golpes con ganas. In fact, when I was putting together the caravan to bring supplies and comfort to the Mexico-Texas border and needed to rally over 100 volunteers, who did I call? I called Raul Lomelí. And we went to San Antonio because of the big, huge heart of people like Raul, Teresa Niño, Iñigo, and others that greeted us there. And I mean over 100 volunteers. They had no idea who I was. You got to know where to go, and you got to know who to call. When I'm asked by undocumented students for resources, guidance, or simply a source of inspiration, who do I point them to? I point them to Gabby Pacheco. And please know that this award means even more because I'm sitting across from leaders like Gabby and Mr. Perez and allowing me to be part of their celebration of tremendous accomplishments. When I need guidance on issues of immigration and justice, I call Estuardo Rodriguez, I call Cesar Moreno, I call Susana Sandoval, I call a lot of you in this room when I need your support. In 2014, when the unaccompanied minor crisis exploded on our borders, and they were met with the vitriol, chaos, and heartlessness as children and young refugees, as they were branded as invaders, who did I seek out to allow me and others into a shelter that were not easy to get into at the time and connect directly with those in need and try to amplify the issue across our country? I went to Sister Norma Pimentel. She's also, by the way, trying to teach me how to be more gracefully angry and gracefully frustrated and gracefully convincing. She does everything with grace, and I'm working on it, sister. Pray for me. But we do need to nourish people's needs to care. That's a very important thing that we have to do collectively, to love and support, because there's been a feeding frenzy on the other side of hate and divisiveness. We need to do a better job of providing the caring bystander with a bridge from feelings to action. When I put a delegation to the border together 5 years ago, I looked to my colleague, Roberto Callejas, who's here with me tonight, and he's been with me for 15 years, after he quietly let me know that he was one of those unaccompanied minors when he came from El Salvador. I also called my compadre Luis Cardona, actress America Ferrera, and others like board members like Stacy Oliveras Castain, Monica Villarreal. They joined us on this mission. And my team allowed me to go. My board allowed me to go. That's a very important thing, because a lot of people say that's not within your specific narrow mission. It gets broader when you're defending the most vulnerable in your community. You got to know who actually cares. When thousands of refugees journey from our borders into our communities, with a large majority ending up here in the DMV, who do I go for health care, including crucial mental health and social services? They go to Mary Center under my sister Maria Gomez's care. When I wanted to see what Innovative Leadership Institute exclusively for young professionals, DACA recipients, would look like, who'd I call to actually develop it and implement it after challenging him, saying, most leadership trainings do the same thing. It's almost a pro forma way of looking at it. But I went to Juan Sepulveda for a unique view on it. When children are being villainized after being traumatized, where do I go for a program that takes a cohort of unaccompanied minors from 2014, works through their trauma using the arts, then hires a playwright as well as professional actors to tell their stories based on their actual stories? And let me tell you how important that is. I think Dreamers have done a great job, thanks to Gabby and others, of telling their story, and Mr. Graham, who's here. That's why 80 or 90% of the country actually supports Dreamers. But refugees have become defined by the other side. That's always a problem. That's why we called it a caravan, because even caravan was being co-opted and villainized. It's really important that we tell the story of our refugees. We tell the story of our unaccompanied minors, of our TPS recipients, as well as we tell the story of our dream community. But I went to Imagination Stage, where I'm a board member, and I went to Council Member Gabe Albarnoz, and I went to my man Luis to put together Óyeme, a play that is touring across the DMV for the 5th year in hopes of building empathy, understanding, and support of these brave children. Fast forward to this past summer as families were literally being torn apart by malicious opportunists. But this time, there was actually a palpable heartbeat for most of the country in support. Who did I know was going to go down to the border and not just bear witness, but to actually comfort the children and families who were so scared and disoriented and vulnerable? I called Alejandra Castillo, Nancy Santiago Negron, Maria Cardona, once again my man Luis, Monica Ramirez, Abel Nunez, Tisiki Felix, and the Islamic Society of North America, the AJC, and many others. Again, making sure that everyone is involved with this effort. And the truth is, as we were trying to provide comfort and care to these families, the children and families ended up comforting us because we quickly became the vulnerable ones. And as Luisa said, this crisis provides us with the opportunity to care, to love, to heal. Because we need to heal after the past few years, to be honest with you, after the past century. As individuals, as a community, as a country, we need to heal in order to serve. And the best way to heal is to actually serve. The best way to lead is to serve. It's a privilege to serve. If you can help anyone, no matter what you're going through in your life, you're in a position of privilege. And with that privilege comes a big responsibility. We all share in that responsibility, and I'm profoundly moved by being a part of the bigger lucha that you've allowed me to be in. But we need to be actionable. We need to be impatient with injustice. We need to be creative with how we deal with it. As we defend the most vulnerable, we need to be as fervent as we would be with our own children. My own wife and children allow me to do this work. They're a huge part of this work by sacrificing my time, by hosting strangers into our home, by making sure our own children, living in a different circumstance, understand their responsibilities to these other kids that look just like my children. As you can hear loudly, I'm empowered and humbled by surrounding myself with impactful partners that I count on, lean on, who energize me. I'm proudly accepting this award on behalf of them. I'm proudly accepting this award in tribute to the MALDEF board and staff, in tribute to the remarkable Hispanic Foundation board and staff who allow me to do this work and support me in everything I do. I accept this award in tribute to the countless other organizations and individuals who are serving the needs of the most vulnerable in our community every single day. I accept this award in tribute to the advocates that tirelessly continue in la lucha against hate and injustice, all of whom are much more deserving of this recognition than me. But I will proudly accept it on their behalf. And lastly, as Americans, we are called upon to lift the lamp by the golden door, as it reads in the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty, which has greeted immigrants and refugees for more than a century. As an immigrant, I thank MALDEF and everyone in this audience for continuing the tradition, an American tradition, of lifting that bright, glorious lamp to our immigrant and refugee communities. Gracias.
Gracias, Antonio. MALDEF is so grateful for your dedication. And I didn't know you were siblings. I've known your sister since I moved to Washington 5 years ago, and her work also helps tremendously the Hispanic community. So a very dedicated family. And now I have the great pleasure of introducing MALDEF's Washington, D.C. Regional Counsel, Andrea Centeno.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you all for being here tonight to commemorate MALDEF's 50th anniversary and to celebrate our wonderful honorees. The work we do is simply not possible without the contributions and the generous support of each and every one of you here. It's clear that we're living in a unique time in history, a time that is testing the nation's collective conscience of who we are and who we want to become. And this administration is relentlessly persistent in its pursuit of an hateful, anti-Latino, and anti-immigrant agenda. I'm here to assure you that the DC office remains a stalwart defender of the Latino community. Over the past year, the DC office has fought discrimination on multiple fronts. You've heard tonight a couple of times about the reference to our litigation challenging the Trump administration's decision to add a citizenship question to the 2020 census. It's clear that the addition of this question and the purpose of it was to instill fear, to discourage Latinos and immigrants of color from participating in the census, and that would have broad negative effects on Latino representation and access to necessary resources and services that families rely on every single day. MALDEF and co-counsel Asian Americans Advancing Justice, AAJC, challenged that action in federal court in Maryland. And the legal team, led by our National Senior Counsel Denise Hewlett, conducted a trial earlier this year. I'm happy to say, as has been mentioned already, that on Friday, along with, and I just want to recognize the co-counsel from related litigation from Covington and Burling, we secured an important legal victory when the judge in our federal case ruled against the Trump administration. It's an important victory not just for Latinos, but for the entire American public. And we're hopeful that the Supreme Court sustains this win. But MALDEF has also successfully challenged other forms of discrimination. We've challenged employers that have discriminated against DACA holders and denied our clients access to opportunities and jobs in their companies. We were able to secure changes to their hiring policies and seek relief for our clients. We also continue to work side by side with our partners to call on Congress to pass a permanent legislative solution for Dreamers and those with temporary protected status, including a pathway to citizenship. And MALDEF was a strong voice against the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, because we know how critical a neutral, impartial, and qualified bench is to ensuring quality for every single individual. Just last month, our President and General Counsel, Thomas Saenz, testified in front of Congress on the need to restore the full protections of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, particularly with a redistricting cycle coming up. I'll say on a personal note, I'm incredibly honored and very humbled to serve as DC's newest regional counsel. And to be a part of the next generation of MALDEF's leadership. This accomplishment is a credit to my parents, my family, my friends, and the larger community that I'm a part of. You all inspire me and you motivate me in the continued struggle for civil rights. Many of you are here tonight, and I thank you sincerely. I'm very proud to lead an amazing team of staff that continues to give the most of themselves every single day. I want them to stand to be recognized. Brianna Chapa, Adam Fernandez, and Bert Lopez. We are a lean but rock star crew. And I also want to recognize our current and former interns who are here tonight. We rely on your contributions greatly, and I assure you that we're very proud of the work you've continued to do. So thank you, everyone here tonight. We're grateful for your generosity, and together we are poised to carry on the MALDEF legacy into the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. I now would like to introduce Vilma Martinez to the stage, Ambassador of Argentina in the United States.
Okay. Thank you. So while we're fixing the glitch, I get a chance to talk to you. And I have to say, I have to admit that when I first thought about 50 years of life for MALDEF, part of me was really disappointed because I had hoped that MALDEF's work would be finished, complete. On reflection, however, I have come to understand that breathing life into our nation's ideals and goals is work that never ends. When I look at where we are today, with a president who stokes fear and division, who disrespects the other two co-equal branches of government, the Congress and the judiciary, as well as the press, it's clear that our country's commitment to our ideals and goals, such as the notions that all men are created equal, entitled to equal protection before the law, that we are a country committed to a pluribus unum, fashioning out of many indigenous and immigrant streams one nation under God. This commitment is under attack as never before in my memory. So today, I want to underscore a few things. One, that a country to create a vibrant democracy is work that never ends, work which MALDEF and its honorees here tonight are committed to. That many challenges remain. In my day, it was expanding the Voting Rights Act. Today, it's voter suppression. Voter suppression must be stopped. As a mother, I believe that civics has to be reintroduced into our nation's classrooms so that future voters understand that vote is so important. The American dream has to be revitalized, and access to education is key. Income inequality has to be addressed. These are all very, very tough jobs. But here's the thing. All of these challenges have to be dealt with in today's difficult environment. And I have a few thoughts about today's difficult environment. A recent ABC News Washington Post poll found that American voters ranked reducing divisions among people in our country as one of the top 3 concerns, after only healthcare and the economy, where the impacts of automation and globalization have to be articulated and addressed, where our country needs to come to terms with the fact that our demographics have changed. They're not changing, they have changed. The Census Bureau has estimated that by 2045, non-white Americans will outnumber whites. So addressing these challenges in this environment requires the energy, the talent of everybody in this room: citizens, government officials, media, and advocacy groups such as MALDEF. So on this, MALDEF's 50th anniversary, I reflect with pride in MALDEF's past accomplishments, and with confidence that your work and MALDEF's work is in the very best of hands. Yours. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Vilma. MALDEF is so grateful for your support of its mission during the last few years. And now it's with great pleasure that I would like to introduce MALDEF's second honoree this evening, Abelardo Al Perez. Al Perez has spent his life dedicated to public service. He began his career with military service in the United States Navy before becoming a political officer within the U.S. States Department in the early 70s. Al Perez was named Regional Counsel of MALDEF's Washington, D.C. office, where he managed efforts to amplify MALDEF's voice in national affairs, media, Congress, legislation, and the White House. He also created coalitions with other Latino organizations to promote issues of critical importance to the Mexican-American community, including education, immigration, employment, and voting rights. And perhaps most notably, as MALDEF's Washington Regional Counsel, he mobilized the facts, legal arguments, and resulted in the protection of Latino voters. He successfully marshaled other Latinos to join him in testifying before Congress on the need to expand the voting rights of 1965 to Spanish speakers and the Southwest. The issue was crucial since widespread Latino disenfranchisement was a major cause of the economic and social woes of the Latino community. And working with other groups and pro bono attorneys, Al Paris conceived, implemented a legislative, legal, media, and community strategy to carry out the Voting Rights Act expansion, which has had an enduring electoral impact on millions of Latinos. Al received his undergraduate degree at the University of Houston and earned a JD from the George Washington University Law School. So now we have a video of Al's accomplishments. Let's take a look.
Al was the mastermind of MALDEF's Voting Rights Act struggle. We had a difficult problem in 1974 and 1975. We had no support for covering Texas under the Voting Rights Act, and so we had to build that support, and it was really Al who was the mastermind of that strategy, the puppeteer behind the whole effort. And his second legacy was to establish MALDEF here in Washington, D.C., make it an institutional presence here in Washington, and make it part of the real big political discussions over the fate of the nation.
I think what has driven Al is the same thing that has driven so many of us. That we grew up at a time when being Mexican American was difficult. People didn't believe we had talent despite evidence to the contrary. And I think that's driven him his entire life. He is, as you may know, from Brownsville, Texas. I'm from San Antonio. So we know whereof we speak.
I would say that he became a shining light for other young people. He motivated other young people to acquire what we call in this world success. Became a Foreign Service officer, a lawyer, he had a MALDEF here in Washington, D.C. He worked the Civil Rights Commission, documenting discrimination against Mexican Americans for the first time in history. It's pretty good.
I think what's driven Al is the fact that he wants to make a difference, that he really cares deeply about a lot of issues. But again, somebody who wants to do something that has a sense of purpose and meaning, and very much, along the lines of public service. He has made a difference in serving our country. Certainly, when I knew him, when I got to know him well in the Foreign Service. As I said, he was a very good political analyst. He was, courageous. He wasn't afraid, to do something different, and he did it well.
I've been thinking a lot about Al's accomplishments, and there are many that I would like to talk about today. The key accomplishment really was persuading me and then directing MALDEF's effort in 1975 to expand the Voting Rights Act to include the voting rights of Mexican American citizens. Success was by no means assured, but frankly, the success that Al developed for us reverberates today in the rights that people today have to exercise that right to vote. Clearly, Al is a brilliant lawyer, a talented writer. I've met very few better writers than Al. And he was able to use those talents so seemingly effortlessly on our behalf. And his legacy is going to be that he did a lot to further Mexican American civil rights, whether it's voting rights, higher education, or immigration, domestic civil rights crossover issues. He did an incredible job.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Abelardo Perez.
Thank you all. I can get kind of emotional, so bear with me. It is with deep appreciation that I accept this honor and thank the Maldives Board and Maldives officers for this recognition. I have the privilege of having my family here. My beautiful wife, Carol, my son, Michael, my daughter, Caroline, her husband, Jacob, my daughter, Marisa, my sister, Frances, and my brother-in-law, her husband, Rick. Frances and Rick came all the way from Texas to be here. And they actually surprised me. I had no idea they would be here tonight. So thank you for making the trip. I also want to thank all my friends who made time to share this evening with me. To me, friends occupy the empty space between family and strangers. And in my case, they play a vital role in balancing my life. Someone once said that there are three kinds of people in this world: those that make things happen, those that let things happen, and those that ask, what happened? Maldives people belong in the first category. They make things happen. Tonight, we're observing Maldives' 50th anniversary. 50 years of sustained excellence. I took over as regional counsel in Maldives DC office in 1974. I worked on a variety of issues, but my most enduring legacy was working to amend the 1965 Voting Rights Act. My goal was to work against the suppression of voting against Latinos in the Southwest, especially Texas, where I'm from. The 1965 Act had special provisions to guard against voter suppression, but they were mostly meant to protect African Americans in southern states. In 1975, we were able to amend the Act to expand those special provisions to other geographic areas, especially Texas. Professor Luis Fraga from Notre Dame estimated that the Maldives amendments in 1975 impacted from 40 to 50 million people. Now, the bad news. The impact lasted about 40 years until the Supreme Court in 2013 struck down the special provisions. It was a sad day, really sad, sad day. The passage of the 1975 amendments was a complicated process and would take too long for me to discuss. Tonight, I want to highlight people who played pivotal roles in getting the amendments through Congress. I'm using the pronoun I because I'm being honored tonight. But the amending the act was a team effort, a team of visionary and gutsy people who came together at the right time, at the right place, for the right cause. Some team members are here tonight, but I also want to recognize others who have never received appropriate credit for their contributions, starting with Cecilia Koska. In 1974, when I got into Maldives, Cecilia Koska called me and said that the 1965 Act was in the process of being renewed, and that she was disappointed because the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, where she worked, was not going to address voter suppression against Latinos. I thought this was a good thing for Maldives to get involved in. Cecilia handed me an internal commission document that laid out voter suppression against Mexican Americans, particularly in Texas. Because she brought this to my attention, Maldives got involved. Now, I don't know whether she could have been fired for leaking the document, but she did. So Cecilia and I worked very closely for a whole year, and finally were able to get those amendments through the Congress. So Cecilia, wherever you are, your courage made the amendments possible. And I salute you. Elsa Moreno. Elsa worked at the U.S. Bureau of the Census, and she was a key fount of information for us. She got access to all the data by county that the census generated. And why was this important? Because we were able to take her data and compute a variety of formula which determined which parts of the United States would be covered under the Maldives amendments. I have no idea if she was risking her job for doing this, but she did it. She never failed to deliver. So Elsa, wherever you are, your courage made the amendments possible, and I salute you. Rosa Markham was my only secretary, my first and only secretary at Maldives. She took the census data that Elsa provided and did hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of calculations to determine what states, counties, and cities would be subject to the special provisions under Maldives' proposed amendments. She did this with only a Texas Instruments handheld calculator, punching endless numbers, for days on end, for weeks on end. By the time Congress approved of our amendments, we knew exactly what geographic areas would be covered under our amendments. So Roseanne, wherever you are, your dedication and hard work were indispensable to your effort. Now it's Tom Reston and David Tatel. After Maldives decided to get involved with the VRA, I realized we needed legal help analyzing case law to determine how best to draft our amendments. Since I had interned at a law firm called Hogan & Hartson and knew that they had a pro bono program, I went to them, knocked on the door, and said, "We need help." The firm assigned Tom Reston and David Tatel to help us. Tom and David did brilliant work in drafting the amendments that eventually became law. Most people involved with voting rights now have no idea that Tom and David drafted those amendments. Tom is in the house tonight. Please stand, Tom, wherever you are. Tom, I want to express my personal appreciation and long-time affection for making the amendments possible and for your continuing embrace of Maldive causes. David Tatel, wherever you are, I salute you for your superb advocacy on behalf of the over 40 million language minorities affected by your work. And now we come to Vilma Martinez. Want to stay up a little bit? Vilma had just assumed the leadership of Maldive when she recruited me to take over the Maldive DC office. I thought to myself, this is a sweet deal. Vilma would be in the West Coast, I would be in the East Coast, 3,000 miles away, so I could do my own thing. But you don't know Vilma. She quickly reminded me she was the boss and make sure I was earning my $18,000 starting salary. Really, Vilma? $18,000? And I accepted. What was I thinking? Vilma and I discussed the cost of getting Maldive involved with the VRA and eventually decided, as in Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote Hamilton, wrote, "We are not throwing away our shot. We are not throwing away our shot." However, getting Maldive involved with the VRA was not easy, as has been mentioned before. There was enormous opposition to our effort. I had bitter fights with national civil rights leaders who wanted nothing to do with Maldive. I know I offended some of them. They told me so. But here's the thing, and this still stands out for me. Vilma never second-guessed me. She never told me, back off. She never apologized for my aggressive approach with civil rights icons, and never questioned my approach to the media, Congress, Latino organizations, and the White House. Vilma, I don't think I would thank you enough for having my back during the crucial 1974. Mexican President Benito Juarez counseled that among individuals and among nations, respect for the rights of others is peace. A simple concept, but oh so hard to achieve. Nowadays, when many politicians swear allegiance to the Constitution, but shamefully find devious ways to suppress our rights to vote, the need for Maldive's work is increasingly imperative. So Maldive, today we observe your successful 50 years. And in that regard, I will drop the mic. For the next 50 years, Godspeed. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Abelardo. What an ending. Maldive is so grateful for your efforts to ensure equality and justice for the Latino community under the law. And now we have our final award, which goes to Maria Gabriela, or Gabi Pacheco. And she's a recipient of MALDEF's Excellence in Community Service Award. And Gabby Pacheco is an immigrant rights leader from Miami, Florida. She currently serves as program director at the Dream.us, a college access and success program for immigrant youth without documentation. And as an immigrant with a mixed status family, she's experienced firsthand the intricacies and difficulties immigrant families face in the United States. In 2006, Immigration and Customs Enforcement raided her home and attempted to silence her. Her parents and sister were put in deportation proceedings, and she's been central to the advocacy of immigrant rights. And in 2010, with 3 other undocumented students, she led the Trail of Dreams, a 4-month walk from Miami to Washington, D.C., to call attention to the plight of immigrant families under the threat of deportation. In 2012, as political director for United We Dream, she drove the efforts that led to the announcement of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program known as DACA. And she's also the first undocumented Latina to have testified before Congress. Commanding a strong media presence, Gabby has written many opinion pieces for national newspapers like the New York Times, Washington Post, and USA Today, just to name a few. And she can also be seen on national television providing her analysis on networks like Telemundo, Univision, MSNBC, and CNN. Gabby has received her respective associate's and undergraduate degree from Miami-Dade College, and in 2015 received a doctoral degree from the New School. So now let's take a look at the life and work of Gabby Pacheco.
My first impression of Gabby was that I was just overwhelmed by her passion and her poise. She is so personable and really is very bipartisan in the approach and very strategic in her approach of reaching out to different people to talk about immigration rights and immigrants' rights. I really appreciated that Gabby really focuses on the person behind the politics.
I would say that Gabby's legacy to date is in fact DACA, is in fact a bipartisan Senate bill that hopefully, actually I have confidence, will see the light of day once again, but that legacy is still to be written in its entirety.
Well, everybody's first impression of Gabby is that she's serious and original. Gabby doesn't say what everybody else says. She is deep, she is thoughtful, she listens to others. And this is Washington, D.C. Believe me, not everybody listens to others. Gabby wanted to spend her time not with the people who agreed with her about what should be done in immigration, but with those who did not.
I think she's one of those voices that says, listen, we cannot just talk to one side. We need to talk to both sides and push them together for a common cause. And I think she's very direct. She's not fearful of doing it. She's not ashamed of doing it. She says, you know, listen, we have a common goal. We're all here. We want all accomplish the same things. But you know what? We have to come together to do that. And that's one of the things that I admire about her that she's doing lately. And it's that trying to bring all the voices together.
This is an extraordinary woman. I mean, when you look back on it, I mean, she was involved in battles for justice when it came to undocumented people at a very early age, fighting for access to textbooks initially, and then throwing herself completely into the cause of supporting the Dreamers. She's clearly dedicated to justice. She is invincible. She's just a person who's going to join the fight and stick with it all the way. And there were just times when she made decisions that really changed history. One of the first things she did was to bring the Dreamers out of the shadows. For the longest time, those who were Dreamers, here undocumented, were very quiet about it. And And then there came a day when everything changed. They started wearing t-shirts saying, "I'm a dreamer." People like Gabby started marching, trying to attract public attention to the cause. That was a courageous thing on her part, in what she was trying to do. That's when I first really noticed what she brought to this battle. Well, I can tell you that she was the first undocumented Latina to testify before Congress. I introduced her in the Senate Judiciary Committee, and again, she made history with that appearance. Again, at the time that she did it, there were critics here in the Capitol building who were calling for her arrest. A lot of us were calling for her to be recognized as a real authority when it came to the aspirations and hopes of dreamers. She's received a lot of recognitions in her young life. I'm sure there'll be many more ahead. But at a critical moment, when it came to the DREAM Act and to DACA, Gabby Pacheco was there.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome and congratulations to Gabby Pacheco.
Maybe after Al's prop, I need to start dancing up in here. Yes, I am the last speaker. Yes. So it's such a humbling experience to get recognized for the work that you do. But when the organization who's recognizing you is one that you highly regard in your heart, well, you get little butterflies in your stomach, your hands start sweating a little, and you're left speechless. But I'm going to try to find the right words to share how grateful I am for this recognition, because there are so many people in this room that I love and I deeply admire. And of course, MALDEF, which has played such an important role in my life. So I learned about MALDEF during a college class where we were given an assignment to research the major laws and the rulings that made education possible for all children. I didn't understand when I was an immigrant child that years before I was even born, someone fought for my education and future. I am here today giving back to my community because MALDEF was there for me first. And again, even before I was born, yes, I am trying to let you all know that I'm pretty young, though I had to wear these glasses to be able to see this. MALDEF was there and was fighting for me to ensure that all children, including immigrant children like myself, had a fair chance to learn and thrive. So being a child and having someone believe in them is the greatest gift we can give to our little ones. And it is because people believed in me and understood how hard some people had, and I understood how hard some people had worked for me, that even without knowing me, I knew that I had to step up and work as hard to pay it forward for others. There are so many things that sets us apart, but reality is that we all share 99.9% of the same DNA. The world can feel so disconnected and the problems we face are so overwhelming, but we are in this together. And within our collective power, we have the ability to solve those problems. And the great news is that we don't have to be or have superpowers or be celebrities or have infinite wealth, or even perfect health to do something. Caring for others, for our community, and making an impact is something that we can all do. And yes, it was in 2006 when I first learned about the concept of deferred action. And it was a pretty tragic way I learned about this because, as you heard, ICE came looking for me. They detained my parents and my sisters. And I called this woman who had been spared from deportation the year prior. And I asked her, how did you get to stay? How were you allowed to stay in the country? And she told me there's this discretionary thing I was given called deferred action. My parents and sisters in 2009 received deferred action, which I credit to why they are still here with us today. And so in 2009, along with an organizer from New York, we came up with this idea, this bold idea, to ask President Obama to grant Dreamers this same status. And it took a walk from Miami to Washington, D.C., and 2 years of countless numbers of actions, putting our bodies on the line, people speaking up, allies, many of you in this room, standing with us to push the President, Congress, and the Department of Homeland Security to finally convince them to do this program. Our collective efforts made it possible for close to 1 million people to not only have reprieve from deportation, but work permits and a little bit of breathing room to live our lives more freely. I would never forget this. The day DACA was announced, I got a call from my father. And he said to me, I am calling you today, not as your father, but as a father of a young man who is getting lost, who I could see is losing hope, who is desperate to live out his life. Thank you for giving me, my son, this gift. Now I'm not quite sure how karma works, or if it works, but I do believe that the good we do in this world, especially when we're doing it for others, will come back to us in some way. So what a group of lawyers did to protect a group of small children, farm worker children in Tyler, Texas, in the late 70s and early 80s affected me and millions of other children like me. I'm thriving and I'm giving back to the community because members of MALDEF, because people like Vilma fought for me. I'm so grateful for this award, but I'm mostly grateful for every single one of you who are in this room. Your support for not just MALDEF, but for the little kids, the ones that are coming, seeking love, support, safety, for the children in our community who want to go to college, for the young people in the tables who are scholars and part of the Dream.us, who every day work tirelessly to show this nation not only that they belong here, but they're worthy of everything that they want, their hearts desire, because we know if they thrive, our country will thrive too. So thank you for supporting MALDEF. Thank you for supporting the work that they do, and especially to the lawyers, to my homegirl, where's Andrea? Thank you for everything that you do. Everyone in the LA office, San Antonio, Chicago, and we're gonna be opening new offices soon as we get some money in, right? but to the tireless work that the lawyers and staff and their leader, Tom Sines. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gabby, for your dedication to empowering the Latino community. And now I'd like to welcome back to the stage MALDEF President and General Counsel Thomas Sines.
See, I have a prop too. I can't drop mine though. So, thank you all for your patience. Thank you all for being with us tonight. It is absolutely true that in these times we count on the partnership of each and every one of you to continue to work together with partners within and outside the Latino community to promote the civil rights of all Latinos living in the United States. I want to begin by thanking those who have been responsible for such a celebratory and inspiring evening. I start with our terrific Master of Ceremonies. Thank you, Claudia Curiel, for your stewardship of this terrific evening. You've already met earlier our board chair, Raul Lomelí, who asked me to let you all know that it now works. You can make the donations using the tent on your tables. And if you can't, please email Gina Montoya at gmontoya@maldef.org. But in addition to Raul and Gabi, who is one of our board members, we have a number of former and current board members in the room who have given of their time, of their passion to our mission over the years. I'd like to ask all of the current and former board members to please stand and accept our gratitude. And of course, an event like tonight is not going to succeed without the partnership of so many, including those who volunteer to serve on our dinner committee. And so I'd like to ask all of the dinner committee members to please stand and accept our gratitude for your help in this important endeavor. You met Andrea, and she introduced her incredible staff here in Washington, D.C. And the truth is, I have the privilege of leading a crew of incredibly committed and passionate staff across the entire country, from our headquarters in Los Angeles to where we were founded in San Antonio, to Chicago, to here in D.C. We are also always privileged over the years to have some of our veterans continue to be with us, to support us, to cheer us on, and to provide important advice as we go. It's no coincidence that on this 50th anniversary gala, we chose to honor one of our former staff leaders in El Perez. But I would now like to ask all of the current and former MALDEF staff members to please stand. I'm very proud to say, Al, that we pay all of them more than $18,000 a year. I want to thank the team that's responsible for putting together events like this. It's been a particular burden, one that they have joyfully borne in this 50th anniversary commemoration year. So let me recognize Gina Montoya, Sandra Hernandez, Julie Gallego, Elijah Pantoja, Belen Cid Garcia, Jose Delgado, and all of the others who have contributed to making this such a successful event, and to all of our 50th anniversary events. Thank you. And of course, the inspiration tonight has come from our incredible honorees. Again, not a coincidence that they include a partner, a former staff member, staff leader, and a current board member. It's an appropriate recognition and an appropriate reflection through their inspiration of the hard work and incredible accomplishments that Maldiv has achieved over 50 years. So let me thank once more the eloquent and innovative Antonio Tijerino, our dedicated and creative Al Perez, and of course the brilliant and indefatigable Gabi Pacheco. It is such a privilege to have my predecessor, Vilma Martinez, here this evening, not just because she was a pioneer. I will tell you all, she rejects that label and has throughout the entire time I have known her, which actually extends back to when I was 18 years old. But she has been a pioneer for many decades, including beginning with her being the president of Maldiv in 1973, the first woman to head a national civil rights organization. And I am proud to say that through 29 of Maldiv's 50 years, this organization has been led by a woman. I know that there is no other organization that can make that claim. No other civil rights organization can make that claim, and of that we are most proud. But Vilma's contributions continue way beyond 1973. Throughout her continued decades as a pioneer, she has always been open and willing to provide useful advice, to provide important perspective, and, as you heard tonight, to deliver critical inspiration when needed. Vilma, thank you for joining us tonight. As we convene less than half a mile from the White House, with a current resident who seems intent, hell-bent, on changing that descriptor from merely an explanation of the color of the outside of the walls and the columns to meaning something deeper and more troubling. We live in challenging times. Better said, we all know that we live in maddening times. What else can one say about the blatant hypocrisy, contradiction, and inconsistency of an administration that would, in September 2017, proclaim, through perhaps the worst Attorney General in the history of this nation, and those who remember Edwin Meese understand what that means, but through an announcement in September 2017 that DACA, the critically important initiative that recognizes the inherent injustice in our current immigration system and the necessity of exercising discretion to protect some of the most critical contributors to our ongoing success as a nation. The explanation offered by that Attorney General, without a shred of legal support, was that the President lacked the power, lacked the executive authority to grant what so many of his predecessors had previously granted, in numbers just as large, of protection, prosecutorial discretion to protect a class of important immigrants. Less than 18 months later, the same administration that proclaimed the weakness, the lack of authority to maintain a program with supermajority support across the country would claim, arrogate the authority through an emergency declaration to divert billions of dollars from previous congressionally approved purposes to the building of an unnecessary wall. That contradiction in legal proclamation has gone unremarked. These are maddening times. What to make of an administration hell-bent on building that expensive and unnecessary wall on the southern border, while at the same time claiming that the nation of Mexico would pay for the wall, and at the same time continuing to assert the right to close the border and to deny, most recently, aid to the nations whose country conditions create a wave of refugees seeking relief from conditions in part created by our own country in its foreign policy and its immigration policies of the 80s and 90s. What to make of that hypocrisy, which too has gone unremarked in our media? The only consistency that we have seen with this administration is to pursue policies that are hypocritical, contradictory, and damaging to our best interests. The danger that we see is that that hypocrisy that takes the particular form of elevating citizens above all others to a greater extent than ever fathomed, than ever countenanced in our history. It goes beyond the White House. We are in the midst, as you all know, of a scurrilous admissions scandal involving some of the most privileged people in our nation, who have used their privilege to gain unwarranted access for their children to some of the most prestigious universities, including my alma mater, in the country. As we've seen the media cover that scandal, we have seen suggestion after suggestion that whether the children should be expected to pay the consequences of their parents' wrongdoing depends on what they knew and when they knew it. Now, we're talking about 16 and 17-year-olds in the process of transitioning to adulthood. And yet the media's consistent treatment has been to carefully ascertain the children's culpability. And yet no one has discussed the many leaders in this country, including a half a mile away, who have failed to recognize that children brought to this country at even more tender ages are in the process, if this administration succeeds, of being placed in removal and deportation without any regard to what they knew or when they knew it. That hypocrisy, unremarked, as we continue to read day after day about this admissions scandal. I was wrong when I said the only consistency in this administration has been the inconsistency. The consistent theme has been to target us, the Latino community, for elimination and exclusion. We've seen it in the cabinet, which initially had not a single Latino member. We've seen it in the court appointments. An administration that has broken records in nominations has failed to nominate to date a single Latino or Latina for any court of appeals in this entire country. The second most important set of courts in our nation, and the administration has nominated not a single Latino or Latina, but also not a single African American to any court of appeals in this country. We have seen it most recently, as you are all aware, in an effort to discount us completely in the census by reducing our numbers through the scurrilous addition of a citizenship question. And beyond this administration, MALDEF has intervened in a lawsuit by the state of Alabama seeking to require the Census Bureau to discount every undocumented immigrant in the country in making decisions about allocating House of Representatives seats and allocating funding. We have seen this effort at exclusion not receive the attention that it should have received and would have received in any other administration. To go back to a cabinet without a single Latino member would be decades. To go back to an administration without a single Court of Appeals, Latino or Latina appointment would be decades. But the media has not covered that story. They also have not covered the most secret effort at voter suppression that this administration is pursuing. That voter suppression comes in the form of unduly and unconscionably delayed naturalizations for those who are eligible and have applied to become citizens. Tens of thousands of people prevented from voting without a single story in the media to cover that as voter suppression. But we've seen it before, even as our allies make great progress, really extraordinary progress in addressing the issue of felon disenfranchisement. We never see a single discussion about an equivalently situated immigrant whose crime will prevent him or her from ever becoming a citizen, much less registering to vote. So when we talk about felon disenfranchisement, we don't mention the potential citizens who are immigrants and denied forever the right to vote and become citizens. So much is not covered by our media. But as we look forward from a vantage point of 50 years of involvement in promoting civil rights for Latinos and others, we know from tonight and our history that we have faced this challenge of exclusion before. I'm proud that tonight we've honored Al Perez, who can explain that the 1965 Voting Rights Act that we all suitably and appropriately celebrated the 50th anniversary of 4 years ago left us out. And it took efforts a decade later, led by this organization, to ensure the protection of our voting rights equivalent to those of others. This year also happens to be the 25th anniversary of Proposition 187 in California, an initiative of which I know many of you are aware, but the young people may not be. It was, and still is, the most draconian anti-immigrant state law ever enacted in the last 50 years of this country's history. It would have involved every public servant from schools to hospitals to social service agencies to police to involve themselves in immigration enforcement and to act upon their reasonable suspicions of who was undocumented. Proposition 187 ended up on the ballot and being enacted because a governor seeking re-election and behind in the polls sought an issue to carry him through. That governor, Pete Wilson, succeeded in being re-elected as the initiative passed with 58% of the vote. But in the process, California was permanently changed. Most pundits today would identify that initiative as the catalyst for what changed the politics of California through increased involvement of Latinos and their allies over years and years in ensuring fair and progressive governance. It always has astounded me that those who look to the playbook written by Pete Wilson, whether Jan Brewer in Arizona with SB 1070, whether those in Texas who continue to support SB 4 and other anti-immigrant measures, including a ridiculous attempt to purge 95,000 legitimate naturalized voters, to Donald Trump, who clearly uses his consistent attempt to exclude Latinos, following a playbook from Pete Wilson. It has consistently astounded me that they don't read to the end of the story, Okay. I know the Donald probably doesn't read. But someone who advises him has failed to read to the end of the story. And I guarantee you that Fox and Friends is not going to cover the 25th anniversary of Proposition 187. But they fail to read to the end of the story. Pete Wilson had his career ended. He had a presidential campaign that lasted about 36 seconds. And he is an ignominious personage in California politics today. We know how that story ends because at MALDEF and with our allies, we are responsible for the story. Just as we are responsible for including Latinos in the Voting Rights Act, just as we are responsible for the incredible Plyler versus Doe decision that Gabby Pacheco mentioned, just as we are responsible for working assiduously to protect immigrants across the country, we are responsible for the story that is Proposition 187. And it is that knowledge, particularly as we increase everyone's awareness, that makes me know that while Vilma understandably laments that MALDEF is needed more than ever a half a century after its founding, that we will prevail, that calling upon the creativity, the resilience, the tenacity of our community, we will prevail. Read to the end of the story, Mr. Trump, and you know where we will meet you. And we will meet you as you leave the White House and enter the dustbin of history. "50 years is a long time. I am 2 years older than MALDEF. Sometimes these days I feel tired, I feel fatigued. But MALDEF at 50 is as vigorous and impassioned as it has ever been. And I know that together with all of you, in 50 years, we will look back on these days of maddening times with pride and achievement and the knowledge that together with our allies, we forged the path to righteousness that we are all entitled to. Please join me then in a toast to MALDEF and another 50 years of great success.
Salud. Ching ching. Thank you so much, Thomas, for leading the Latino community. And with that, first of all, let's give another round of applause to our honorees. I think they all deserve that. And now we have reached the end of tonight's program. Thank you so much for celebrating MALDEF's 50th anniversary Washington, D.C. Gala. Oh, look how much we've raised. Well, how much you've raised, MALDEF. And on behalf of NBC4 and Telemundo 44, thank you so much for having us. Gracias y buenas noches.